Okay, I hope that you hear me, that everything is okay. And I would like to greet you. So, good morning, everyone. Again from Zagreb, from foggy Zagreb today. My name is Tea Čičko, and today I'm going to show you how to use the rubrics in an assignment activity in Moodle system. I believe that many of you are familiar with the term rubrics, and that some of you maybe have already used rubrics for assignment purposes. So I think we'll have enough time at the end of this part of the workshop so that you can also share your experience with us and maybe ask us some questions. So for now, I'm going to share my screen. Okay. So I hope that you see my PowerPoint presentation now. Tona, is everything okay? Yeah, okay. So at, um, at the start of the presentation, I'm going to tell you something about theory, and then we're going to jump to our Moodle system and make some assignment activity and create rubrics. And then we're going to also assess some work of the student, and then I'm going to show you also how it's graded in Moodle. So let's begin with the presentation. So in educational process, the rubrics are used not just for summative, but also for formative assessment. So they serve not only to evaluate student learning, but also to monitor it in order to provide feedback not just to teachers that they improve their teaching, but also to students to improve their learning. Uh, okay, so on this slide, you can see one of the definition of rubrics. But basically, we can define a rubric as a table that contains three main elements. Firstly, that is criteria for evaluating student achievement for a particular assignment. Then we have achievement levels for each criterion. And the third element are descriptions of the achievement for each level of each criterion. So later on, I'm going to show you the types of rubrics, but mainly all the rubrics contain these three elements. So, although the rubrics are primarily intended to evaluate student learning, it should be realized that they are much more powerful tool because they promote good practice in many areas. For example, they promote good practice in communication. So, a rubric creates a common framework and clear expectations. So they give students a clear picture of the teacher expectations through the descriptions of the levels for each criteria. And then they promote consistency and fairness because same criteria and standards are used to assess all the students. So they are fair and consistent. Then they promote transparency because they clearly define the expected levels of achievement from the lowest to the highest. They provide guidance to students in the learning process. So students know what is expected of them when grading, and can therefore direct their learning accordingly. Then rubrics also promote a faster assessment because if the rubrics are really described in detail, uh, teacher know what what should they direct their attention when they're evaluating the work of students. And also, the rubrics reduce the need to write additional comments and explanations to students. The rubrics also identify weaknesses and strengths of the students. So they show them in which areas are they doing well and where they need more support, and they also guide them in the further learning. And rubrics also promote objective criteria because they allow each paper to be graded according to identical and pre-known criteria. So when you are grading with rubrics, you don't compare the works of one student to the work of to another. You just ask yourself, so did this student meet the criteria for level 5 in the rubric? So the works of students are not compared. But it should be also mentioned that rubrics have some disadvantages. For example, one of the disadvantage is time required for preparation. Maybe at the beginning you'll spend a lot of time to create rubric, but basically once created, the rubrics will significantly shorten the time that is needed for the teacher to evaluate student work. Second disadvantage is maybe level balance, because it's not easy to determine how many levels should one criteria have, because too few or too many levels are not good. So it's important that according to each criterion, there are as many levels as necessary to develop all levels of achievement. And then the third drawback is also defining the descriptions for each level of each criterion, because you need to be very careful in the language construction, so that the rubrics do not lead students to complete their assignment so that they only meet your criteria, because that reduces the creativity and quality of their work. Okay, and now I'm going to show you some types of rubrics. So in the literature, there are two main types of rubrics that are analytic and holistic rubrics. Basically, analytic rubrics describe the achievements for each criterion separately and are much more suitable for formative assessment. The drawback or the downside is that they require more time for preparation. So I'm gonna show you now. Okay, so this is that one example of analytic rubric. As you can see, we have criteria. Here we have levels, 4 levels, so adequate, competent, good, and excellent, and each level has its description. And the second type of rubrics are holistic rubric, and they describe the achievement by applying all the criteria at the same time. So as you can see, all the criteria are applied at the same time. So each level has all criteria in one part. Holistic rubrics are much more suitable for summative assessment, because they allow faster assessment, and their downside is that they do not provide detailed feedback on what should be improved. Okay, maybe later you can also study these two types of rubrics and see what the advantages and disadvantages of these two types are. But basically, we have also two more types of rubrics that are generic rubrics and task-specific rubrics. So generic rubrics can be applied to various activities that evaluate a particular skill or competence. For example, rubrics for evaluating problem-solving skills, or oral communication, or written communication, and so on. So the advantage of this kind of rubrics is that they are reusable, so you can use them in many assignments. And the other ones are the task-specific rubrics. So they can be applied just for a specific activity that is evaluated in your teaching process. So, for example, for a preparation of a certain seminar paper, presentation, or a research project. So as you can see, this is one example of a task-specific rubric that is called should be scientific exercise rubric. So it's just for a particular activity, and yeah, it can't be used again. Okay, now back on my presentation. So when you create rubrics, the first question that you need to ask yourself is whether the rubrics needs to be created before or after the assignment that you will grade. Of course, so both approaches are possible, but in the literature recommends the creation of rubrics before the assignment because the process of learning and teaching starts from the learning outcomes, so from what we want to teach. But if you choose to create to make assignment and then create rubrics, it's also not bad. So basically, it depends on which approach you choose. The first step is to look for models of rubrics that you can adapt to your needs for a particular assignment. Or you can look for examples of student work that you want to evaluate through the rubrics. So, and on the basis of the rubrics, you can then adapt those rubrics, create your own rubrics, or you can, on the basis of student work, create the rubrics and then evaluate student work. The second step is to list all the criteria that you're gonna evaluate in a particular assignment. So you don't want that the criteria are too expensive because that consumes more time and it's not so effective. Basically, we recommend that you write 3 to 8 criteria that you want to evaluate. And when you have all the criteria, the third step is to develop levels for evaluation. Also, it's not good to have too many or too few levels. So basically, make 2 to 3 levels and then give each level a name and not just the number of points. And when you have all the levels, you can then write the description of the levels. Also, you need to be careful with the language construction. So you need to be really clear so that the learners, so that students know what is expected of them in each level. And yeah, also you need to make some room for the creativity of the students here. And then when you have written all this, you can use your rubric on an assignment. Basically, before you apply the rubrics on an assignment, you can also discuss the rubrics with your students so that you know that they are going to be familiar with them, so that everything will be clear. And maybe they'll give you also some advice how to improve your rubrics. And basically, when you're gonna assess and evaluate student work, then you're gonna also be able to improve your rubrics and someday maybe make perfect rubrics for your needs. Okay. Now I'm gonna show you the example of the rubrics that I created specifically for today's workshop. So the name of the rubric is Project Research Paper Rubric. So the assignments to students is that they should conduct a research on the topic student perception of the use of digital tools in teaching. And as part of this task, the student must make a theoretical introduction to the topic, determine research objective, research questions, and hypotheses. Then they should define the research methodology and present research results and conclusions. So as you can see, I have developed 8 criteria, and not all the criteria have the same number of levels because yeah, it's not important that they have all the same numbers. So it's important that you that you develop as many levels as needed for each criteria. So, for example, the first criteria is introduction to the topic, and it has 3 levels. And the first level begins with 0 points. So the paper does not contain an introduction to the topic. So the student will get 0 points if that's the truth. The second level is that the paper contains an introduction to the topic, but the topic is not clearly defined, nor is it supported by recent literature. So if that's the case, the student will get 1 point. And the third level of this criteria is that the introduction to the topic was made correctly. The research topic and the problem that was recognized in the relevant sources of literature and are clearly emphasized. So the student will get 2 points if that's the case. And now, so I have the second criteria, static research objective, questions or hypotheses. As you can see, this criteria has 4 levels, and it also, the first level begins with 0 points. Then we have research methodology. It has basically 5 levels, and also the first level begins with 0 points. Then we have presentation of research results. Here we have 4 levels, conclusions also 4 levels, literature 3 levels, grammar and language 3 levels, and document formatting, it has just 2 levels. So it's if the document is formatted according to the rules, or if it's not formatted according to the rules. So the maximum possible points that the student can score with my rubrics is 20. But if you put this rubric in Moodle system, you don't need to specify the points to 20, because Moodle can recalculate all the grades to the point that you want. So basically, I'm going to show you how Moodle system does it. And so let's go. We can go and make some rubrics in Moodle system. So we are here on our testing system. Tona also showed you how to make a lesson. So basically, what you need to do, you need to enable editing in your e-course. And then below the topic in which you want to add the assignment, you need to click on this add an activity or resource, and then choose the assignment activity. So then you need to fill in the general information about your assignment. So for example, we are going to name it assignment. Then we need to add some description for the students if we want to. I think you are really familiar with all these settings. Okay, you can also display description on course page so that the student see them. Then you can also add some files if you want to. I'm not going to do it now. So you can also set the dates for the submissions. For example, my students need to submit their papers till 20th of December. Okay, then you choose the types of submission, feedback types, and so on. Basically, when we create rubrics, the most important set of settings is here in grade. So we need to choose in which way we want to grade the student submissions. So it can be with a scale, and then we can also set that as points. So it's up to you what you want to choose. But today I'm gonna choose points, and I'm gonna I'm gonna set it to 30. So if you remember, the maximum points for my rubrics was 20, but here in Moodle I'm gonna set to 30, and later on I'm gonna show you how Moodle is graded. Then the second most important setting is grading method. So you need to choose here a rubric. So I think most of you choose basically when you make an assignment here this simple direct grading. But if you want to grade with rubrics, you need to choose a rubric. And basically that's it. So when you are ready with your settings, you need to select save and display button. And as you can see, it opens a menu in which we have two options. So we can use an existing template to create rubrics, or we can define new rubrics from scratch. So for example, if I go and choose to make rubrics from a template, you can see that I can do it because I don't have any templates here. So I need to go back and define new rubrics from scratch. Sorry for the interruption. Okay, so the name. So I need to specify the name of my rubric. For example, I can just write test. I can add some description for the rubric. So, for example, if I want to reuse them maybe later, I can add some description. And then I can create rubrics. So as you can see here, we have our table with criteria, with levels, with points, and so on. As you can see, it's really easy to add new elements to my criteria. So, for example, you saw that I already created my rubric, and it's very easy now to create rubrics in Moodle because I can just copy and paste all the elements here. So I'm gonna do it now. Maybe it will take me some time because I have really an extensive rubric, but as you can see, it's really easy. When you click here to edit level, you can write your text, or you can copy and paste your text here. So I'm going to be now really quick in copy and pasting here so that we can go on. So as you can see, I can also adjust the number of points. For example, here that it doesn't need to be 0 points, it can be 1 point. So for example, here can be 2 points and so on. So you can create really a very big number of topics. Okay, but I'm gonna set it to 0. Okay. Okay. Okay, here, then we have research methodology. So as you can see, I need to add a new level here with 4 points. And then I can go on to the next criteria. As you can see, if you have already prepared your rubrics, it's really an easy task to create rubrics in Moodle because you need to just copy and paste it. with mechanic. It's a really easy work here now. I add a new criterion. Okay, and then another one. Okay, two more, and then we're going to be ready. Okay, and now my rubrics are done. But basically, before I want to save the rubrics, I need to erase all the empty elements in my rubrics because the Moodle system won't allow me to save the changes. So as you can see, I need to this level with 3 points erase. Okay, excuse me. Then okay, so all the empty elements now are now erased, so I can save my rubrics. But before I'm gonna save it, I want to show you that you have already some advanced options here, and all the options are already by default selected. So you can choose how you want to sort the order of levels, so descending or ascending by number of points. So I'm going to choose ascending by number of points. Then you can also choose um, when you want to show rubrics to your students. So during the evaluation, before the evaluation, if you want to do it or not, and so on. But the first setting, this calculate grade having a minimum score of the minimum achievable grade for the rubric needs to be selected because because Moodle won't grade your rubric correctly, so you need to leave it as it is. And then when we are ready with our rubric, we need to save rubric and make it ready. So this is it. And I'm gonna now show you how student sees the, the assignment with rubrics. So as you can see, I'm now student 1 and I'm in my e-course. So the student 1 can see the assignment, and in the first part, he can see the general information about the assignment, and then he can see the grading criteria. So the student can see it, can be can make himself familiar with all the criteria, and then he can also adapt his work to those criteria. So he knows what is expected of him before grading. And when the student wants to add submission, when he wants to add his work, he needs to go and click the button submit your work, and then he can choose file submissions. So he can choose one file and he can submit it. Okay, so you can see the student 1 has now submitted a work for grading. And when I go and see it as a teacher, you can see that we have one submitted work that needs to be graded. So I can see that my student 1 submitted the work. I can grade it. So on the left side, the Moodle will generate a PDF of his work, and then I can basically set the rubrics on the full screen, and then I can grade his work according to the criteria. I can also write some remarks that will be also showed to the student, and then I can grade. I can choose the appropriate levels for his work. For example, for first criteria is the third level, basically the level with 2 points. Then, for example, also here this, then here. So all the levels that you choose will be displayed in green color. So you can also change your selection, and it's possible, as you can see. And for example, this. So when I'm ready, I can also write some remarks if I want to. And when I'm ready, I can save changes. And I basically graded the student 1. As you can see, he received 24 out of 30 points. And now we can see how the student 1 sees the grade. So he's in assignment activity. He can view the criteria for grading, and below that he can see the feedback of the teacher. So all the levels that the teacher chose are green, and he can also see the remarks, and so on and so on. He can also see who graded it, and the grade is 24 out of 30. Okay, so basically how Moodle grades it. So we have this fraction here. It's basically the calculation in Moodle. I think for many of you it won't mean anything, but I can show you on my example. So in the first brackets, in the numerator, we see the number of points that the student achieved for the first criterion. So it was 2. And the maximum point for this criterion was also 2. So we need to subtract from this number of points the minimal number of points that was possible to achieve in the first criterion, and that was 0. Okay, so then we need to add in the numerator and the denominator the add sign, and in the second bracket we need to write how many points student 1 achieved for the second criterion. So it was 2, and the maximum possible number for this criterion was 3. And then we need to also subtract the minimal possible points for this criterion. So it was 0, 0. And then we write for the third criterion, for the fourth, fifth, sixth, seventh, and so on. And then we see that the student 1 achieved 16 out of 20 points, which is basically 80%. And this 80% Moodle uses and recalculates it in a way that Moodle multiplies the percentage, so 0.8 is 80%, with maximum possible number of points, and this is 30. So then we receive 24 out of 30 points. So if you want to set the maximum number of points to 50, Moodle will the percentage of the achievement of students will multiply with 50 points, and in this case, student 1 will receive 40 out of 50 points. So I hope that I presented this clear. If not, you can send us some email. You can ask us some questions, and maybe we can then explain it to you more clearly. Okay, so basically, that's it for today. Here is the picture of all the members of the E-learning Centre team here in Zagreb, and we hope that you will gonna visit us maybe soon, and you can also write to us on these 2 email addresses if you want to, if you have any questions.